I'm Diane Berke, founder and spiritual director of One Spirit Learning Alliance and One Spirit Interfaith Seminary in New York City. For the past 25 years, I've had the privilege of training and educating interfaith and now interspiritual ministers for offering spiritual service in an increasingly diverse spiritual landscape. The first interfaith seminary was started in 1981 by a rabbi, a minister, and a priest who had already been engaged in traditional interfaith dialogue work for quite some time. The notion of interfaith ministry grew out of an understanding that more and more people were seeking outside the confines of their own religious background and upbringing, and were often in need of spiritual guidance as well as opportunities to mark the life cycle celebrations that are part of every human journey, but outside of the specific religious contexts of churches, synagogues, mosques, and so forth. In one sense, the original notion of interfaith ministry was really a trans-traditional notion, meaning that it went beyond interfaith dialogue, where people who were still strongly identified and affiliated with a single religious tradition and perspective would enter into conversation with each other in order to develop greater understanding, respect, and tolerance for each other's religious worldviews. Interfaith ministry really tapped into a movement that had to do with appreciating experientially the riches and spiritual treasures that are part of every tradition. So there was an openness to moving beyond simply conversation into actually exploring what it would mean to pray together, what it would mean to practice together, what it would mean to experience each other's observances and celebrations with an openness to how the divine speaks through the richness of these different traditions. In 2002, I was the director of another interfaith seminary, the original interfaith seminary in existence, and I began to sense that there was something emerging that wanted to move even beyond that expression. And around that time, I came across Brother Wayne Teasdale's book, The Mystic Heart, in which he coined the term interspirituality to refer to the deeper level of connection, that sort of deeper mystical underpinning that all of the great traditions arose out of a direct experience of, and that we could actually meet at that deeper level of experience, and from there our sense of connection and sense of community could be much, much deepened and much, much enriched. And I realized in starting One Spirit that it was really the exploration of interspirituality that was the impulse behind giving birth to this new organization and this new seminary. I think that the elements of an interspiritual education are both an emphasis on that deeper level of experience, so that people who go through training in interspiritual ministry are very much supported in undertaking spiritual practice that will help them tap into that deeper river of unitive awareness. At the same time, it's sometimes described as both waking up and growing up, so that it's important not simply that people have those experiences of unitive awareness, but that we undergo the process of personal formation that allows us to integrate and stabilize those experiences so that they become part of every one of our relationships, every one of the different aspects and expressions of our life in this world. So an interspiritual education will also focus on individual, personal, spiritual formation to support people in really maturing spiritually and understanding what that means in the context of a universal spirituality. We're also in a time when the spirituality that's needed is not a spirituality that takes us out of the world, but a spirituality that brings us into engagement in the world, in service to the transformation of social conditions and social institutions and structures. And we think of that as sacred activism, which is the engagement in the world from that deep understanding of our fundamental interconnectedness and our fundamental unity of being. So a focus on sacred activism, a focus on engagement in the world from a place not of adversarial stance, but truly from a place of love and recognition of our interconnectedness, is also an essential element of interspiritual education. At this moment in history, increasing our ability to really understand and create the experience of authentic community in which everyone's contribution is not only respected and invited, but seen as absolutely essential to the flowering and flourishing of the whole, is one of the great spiritual tasks of our time. So that, again, an essential element, as I see it, of interspiritual education is a very direct experience of creating authentic community, which includes learning how to work with those ways and times and places that we get triggered, that we rub up against each other, and learning how to move through that in a process of self-awareness and self-emptying that lets us truly come together in love. And of course, interspiritual ministry education is an invitation to explore new forms of ministry, new forms of spiritual service in a world where this impulse of recognizing our interconnection is becoming more and more alive.